It was supposed to stay off the books, a late-night meeting, a locked hotel suite, 2 teacups, and Princess Diana wearing something she was never meant to take outside the palace, a pendant bearing the Queen's private seal. When a royal guard stepped into that room, he didn't break protocol. He became it. He didn't shout, didn't leak to the press, didn't call security. He just looked at the man sitting across from her, former US President Donald Trump, and said one sentence that shifted everything. So why was Diana wearing the royal seal? Why did Trump claim the guard worked for him? And what did King Charles do when he found out? Before we show you how one soldier changed everything without saying a word, make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and let's get into it. Because this isn't about scandal, it's about discipline. And a guard who knew that some things aren't for sale. They told the press the suite was under renovation. Room service suspended. Corridor attendants replaced with 2 men in black suits. Earpieces barely visible. Even the mirrored lift had its top floor button disabled. But anyone who'd worked the Clarendon Hotel long enough knew what that meant. Royal protocol had locked down the East Wing. Suite 9F, the Clarendon Suite, wasn't listed on the hotel website. It never had been. Ornate ceilings, crown moulding, French silk upholstery. Some said it had been a backup residence for a foreign prince. Others claimed the Queen herself had stayed there during Sandringham renovations. Tonight the chandeliers were dimmed low, not dark, just enough to blur outlines and preserve deniability. 2 chairs faced each other beneath a glass table set for tea. A small porcelain pot sat untouched. 2 cups, one with sugar, one without. Princess Diana sat nearest the window in a white sheath gown, no jewellery except pearl studs and a silver bangle that clinked when she reached for her cup. City lights outlined her silhouette from 5 stories below. She looked calm, poised. But there was something behind her eyes, the kind of caution that came from surviving cameras and kingdoms both. Across from her, Donald Trump had just arrived. No red carpet, no convoy, just a single car dropped in the underground garage, and a direct lift arranged through what his team called a legacy diplomatic connection. His tie was loose, jacket open, hair slightly unsettled. He gestured toward the window. No press, no flashbulbs, no Charles. Diana didn't respond. She held her tea and let the silence stretch. Not unfriendly, not indulgent either. Trump leaned forward. You and I, Diana, we could have ruled the world. She didn't flinch. After a quiet sip, she replied, The world doesn't need rulers. It needs protectors. He studied her, as if trying to decide whether that was a challenge or a lament. Then his eyes dropped to a small box on the corner of the table. Velvet, navy blue. He recognized it immediately, the kind that came from only one place. Diana's hand slipped over the lid. You still wear that? He asked. She didn't answer. Inside was the Queen's personal pendant, a discreet silver insignia bearing the cipher of Elizabeth II and the Windsor seal, not flashy, not well known, but never, under any circumstances, to be seen in private company. Especially not outside the palace. Diana's voice was almost a whisper. It was never meant for ceremony. It was a gift, a reminder. Trump smiled. Well, now it's both. That's when the door opened. A soft click echoed from the hallway, the sound of a secure latch being overridden. Diana didn't react. Trump's smile faded. The double doors swung open with elegant silence. A single royal guard stepped inside. Tall, square-shouldered, crimson tunic catching the chandelier light. Black ceremonial bearskin rigid against the doorway. White gloves, polished boots, no sword, no weapon. Just presence. He said nothing at first. His eyes scanned the room. Not suspiciously, just thoroughly. They paused on the pendant, then landed on Trump. No one moved. Rain tapped gently against the glass. Then, in a voice so calm it felt ancient, the guard spoke. My lady, You're not supposed to wear the crown's seal in private company." The pendant wasn't extravagant, just a palm-sized crest in brushed silver, shaped like an elliptical seal. On one side, the engraved initials E2R beneath a slender crown. On the reverse, a date, August 12th, 1990. No gemstones, no clasp, not meant to be worn, meant to be kept. She hadn't brought it to flaunt. In a room that blurred power and memory, it grounded her, reminded her who she'd been before the cameras, but now in the guard's presence, it had shifted, from comfort to contradiction. Trump leaned back, folding his arms. "Is this some kind of performance? I thought we were past that." The guard didn't respond. His gaze remained steady, trained, observing, recording. Diana placed the box back on the table, left the lid open. The pendant caught the light once more, a glint of monarchy in a room suddenly too full of meaning. Trump chuckled. "You know, technically I've done more for the monarchy than most Brits. Security deals, economic support. You guys wouldn't even have—" "Sir," the guard's voice cut through like a blade through linen. "Protection isn't ownership, and loyalty isn't for sale." The room fell still. Trump's mouth paused mid-sentence. Diana looked down. It wasn't the words that landed hardest, it was how they were spoken. Not loud, not accusatory, just resolute. The kind of voice that doesn't need to raise itself, because truth already carries weight. The guard stepped forward, one measured pace, enough to indicate intent, not enough to suggest threat. He extended a gloved hand, palm open. "My lady, this seal cannot remain in private hands beyond ceremonial custody. Its possession here constitutes a breach of Crown Asset Clause 12. Diana didn't argue. She closed the lid, lifted the box with both hands, and placed it gently into his palm. Her eyes didn't meet his, but the silence between them held understanding. Not submission, respect. The guard gave the faintest nod. Not quite a bow, not quite a salute, just acknowledgement. The kind that lives only between people who know the cost of ceremony. He turned to Trump. His voice held subtle finality. "Your car is waiting, sir." Trump didn't move at first. His fingers tapped once on the armrest. He was used to resistance, not to being dismissed. But the moment had shifted. Authority no longer belonged to wealth, or titles, or political calculation. It belonged to the man who spoke least and acted with rules older than all of them. Trump leaned back, eyes locked on the guard, weighing the balance, like a man accustomed to negotiating with walls. "I had clearance for this meeting. Back channel confirmed." The guard's posture didn't shift. "Clearance expired at 1900 hours, sir. Your presence here is no longer protected under diplomatic discretion." Diana sat silently, hands in her lap, tea cooling beside her. She didn't intervene. She'd been married into a world where words were weapons, but tonight, silence was the sharper blade. From the hallway, faint movement. Trump's aide appeared. Young, dark coat, visibly uncertain whether to enter. The look on his face betrayed quiet panic. Someone who'd just received a text they weren't supposed to see. He took one step, then stopped, registered the uniform, the open box, the stillness. A soft nod from Trump sent him back into the corridor. Trump stood slowly, brushing his jacket into place, straightened his cuffs with deliberate care. A man used to crafting exit visuals. "No hard feelings," he said casually. "Some people are afraid of power when it's not theirs." The guard didn't blink. Power must be exercised, not assumed. Trump gave the faintest chuckle, the kind that said, "You'll see me again." But the guard had already turned. He walked to the door, opened it fully, and stood to the side. Not as a servant, as a sentry. Trump stepped through without another word. In the hallway, flashes flared briefly through the glass, cameras from far below, angles imperfect. Speculation now inevitable. Inside the suite, Diana remained seated. expression unreadable, but something behind her eyes, not fear, not relief, quiet inevitability. The guard stepped back in, held the pendant box at his side. The item will be returned to archives. It was never logged as missing. Diana nodded once. He bowed, deeper this time, not because she was royalty, because she had yielded without protest, because she had known when something sacred had crossed the line. Without turning his back, the guard stepped out, closed the door, and sealed the moment behind him. By morning, Buckingham Palace moved with eerie calm. No alarms, no press conferences, no emergency briefing folders. But something had shifted. Every senior footman felt it. Every assistant noticed it in the way phones rang twice before being answered, in the way no one made eye contact during breakfast rounds. In a discreet office behind the East Wing stairwell, Captain Alaric Denham stood before a security terminal. The screen displayed the previous evening's internal logs, entry times, badge clearances, asset movements. His finger hovered over a single line. Suite 9F. Entry override. Royal escort clearance. 21 Forts. His jaw tightened. He tapped for expanded data. Guard ID. WGS 42 Fielding. Action. Regalia Recovery Class B. Authority Article 6. Beneath it, a short note, manually typed. Item recovered from non-ceremonial possession. Witness, Lady D statement pending. Denham closed the screen, opened a private line. Get me legal protocol and press control, both, immediately. Within 30 minutes, 3 departments were looped in, each speaking in guarded tones. Men who knew the real threat wasn't scandal. It was perception. The guard in question, Fielding, stood at attention in a small review chamber, stripped of his bearskin, but still in full scarlet tunic, hands behind his back, eyes ahead. He had already filed his report. 3 sentences. At 21:14 hours, Suite 9F, Clarendon Hotel. Unauthorized presence of Crown regalia observed in private hands, recovered without resistance, logged under Article 6. A senior legal advisor, grey at the temples, leaned across the table. Fielding, you understand this could be politically sensitive. Fielding didn't answer. The advisor tried again. You interrupted a private meeting between a royal and a former head of state. That places this action into diplomatic grey space. Still nothing. Denham stepped forward. State your rationale. Fielding replied without hesitation. The pendant bore a crest designated under restricted ceremonial custody. It was outside palace bounds. That constitutes a breach. The legal officer folded his hands. You believe the princess acted with intent? Fielding didn't blink. I don't assign intent. I log possession. That answer lingered. Cold, perfectly procedural. They could find no fault. But they debated furiously behind closed doors whether to classify the report, delete the footage, notify His Majesty, because there was more at stake than law. There was narrative. Someone suggested a compromise. Reframe the incident as property retrieval during security protocol reinforcement, neutral, non-accusatory, impossible to challenge publicly. The internal report was revised. No misconduct confirmed, no party named. Artifact secured. When Denham returned to the review room, Fielding had not moved. You're not being reprimanded, but you're not being recognised either. Fielding nodded once, understood. Denham studied him. Most men wouldn't have done it. Not when it was her. Fielding's voice was calm. Most men don't wear the uniform. The file was sealed, a copy sent to Palace Legal, another to private archives. By mid-morning, the entire incident, though never officially acknowledged, was known in whispers throughout the West Wing. They didn't speak of what was recovered, only that a guard had walked into a room, taken something back that was never his to begin with, and walked out without asking permission. That was enough to change everything. The headline broke just after 6. Royal Guard interrupts Private Diana Trump meeting in London hotel. No photos, no video. Just a single paragraph buried in a late-night blog post by a hotel employee using a pseudonym. It would have stayed there if not for one sentence. A ceremonial guard retrieved a royal object from the princess's table. Within an hour, it was everywhere. Social media erupted. Wild theories circulated. Some said it was staged. Others claimed security breach. A few dared suggest the pendant was one of the late Queen's last gifts. Even without an image, the implication was enough. Princess Diana had been caught in a setting that didn't align with palace rules, and worse, Trump had been there. Television panels filled by mid-morning. Analysts debated constitutional precedents. Former palace aides explained what Article 6 meant. Archival footage of past guard interventions was repackaged with dramatic music, cross-cut against photos of Diana from the 90s. The public devoured it. Every detail that couldn't be confirmed deepened the obsession. The suite's reservation record had been erased. Trump's motorcade timing didn't match hotel entry logs. No official statement from the palace. No denial. No condemnation. That, more than anything, fanned the fire. When a palace spokesperson was cornered outside St. James's Gate by a Sky News reporter, all they said was, there was no formal meeting sanctioned by the royal household involving Mr. Trump. Not it didn't happen, just that it wasn't sanctioned. Trump's team moved quickly. By noon, a press release described the night as a brief, informal discussion regarding future philanthropic collaborations. No mention of Diana, no mention of a pendant. Just vague claims of renewed international friendship. But during a live interview on American television, Trump slipped. When asked if the royal family had overreacted, he smirked. I think they're still adjusting to modern diplomacy, but I've always had a great relationship with the princess. The word had didn't go unnoticed. That evening, a grainy photo emerged from outside the hotel. Not of the room, not of the meeting, just a blurred figure in ceremonial tunic exiting a side door beside a black town car. No face, just the unmistakable silhouette of a royal guard. That image alone was enough. Within hours, the guard trended across multiple platforms. Artists recreated the moment in charcoal. Bloggers praised the quiet rebuke of power. Commentators speculated this could be the first real internal stand since the Queen's passing. But within the palace? Nothing. No statement, no press conference, no badge of commendation. The guard who had stepped into the suite returned to his post the next morning without a word. Same stillness, same silence, same red tunic absorbing the rain, as if nothing had happened. But every time a staff member passed him in the corridor, their eyes lingered just a moment longer. Because whatever happened in that suite, he hadn't leaked it, hadn't paraded it. He had simply acted. And somehow that made it louder. It arrived as an invitation. A folded parchment, cream-coloured, sealed with the sovereign's cipher, C3R, delivered by hand to the guard's administrative post at Windsor. No public announcement, no formal order, just 3 words handwritten above the signature line. Attend quietly, alone. Sergeant Fielding read it once, then tucked it into his overcoat. He didn't ask why. He already knew. That afternoon, beneath a charcoal sky threatening rain, he arrived at Windsor Castle through the South Staff Gate. No press, no spectators. Just a steward waiting at the entrance to escort him up the narrow side staircase to the king's personal study. A room few guards had ever seen. Fewer still had entered alone. The study was nothing like the throne rooms that filled postcards. Old, warm, almost modest. Shelves of worn books. A ticking mantel clock. The smell of ink and parchment and something faintly floral. A single pane of stained glass diffused the light. King Charles stood at the far end, facing the window. He didn't turn when Fielding entered. "You may close the door, Sergeant." The latch clicked shut. Silence. Not uncomfortable, but not casual either. The kind that lets both men decide how this will go. Finally Charles turned. No crown, no sash, no medals, just a navy suit, plain tie and the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders, his face lined more from containment than age. But his eyes were steady. He gestured to the chair. Fielding remained standing. Charles didn't press it. "They say you recovered the pendant quietly. No statement, no demands, just protocol." Fielding nodded once. "Yes, Your Majesty." "And you knew the risks of intervening, especially with who was present." "I followed the rule, not the company." The king exhaled slowly, not exasperation, something closer to resignation. He walked to a small desk and picked up a copy of the guard's report. No seal, no edits. 3 sentences. You could have added more. You didn't. Fielding kept his posture still. More would have been interpretation, not fact. Charles nodded slowly. He paced once toward the fireplace, then stopped, hand resting lightly on the carved oak mantel. There was a time when protecting the crown meant shielding it from discomfort, from awkward truths, from itself. He paused. "That time passed with my mother." Fielding said nothing. "You could have leaked the photo, called the press, waited for a commendation that would never come." Fielding's voice was level. "We don't act for recognition, sir." The king looked up, and this time his eyes weren't distant. "You acted for something most people wouldn't have seen. A pendant, a protocol, a single moment." He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "But you reminded all of us, especially me, that the crown isn't a symbol of who we are. It's a reminder of how we're supposed to be." He paused. "Did she look frightened?" "No, sir. Just conflicted." The king studied him, then gave a small nod. Approval. But also caution. The kind that meant, "You did well, and this will never be spoken of again. There will be no inquiry, no statement, no punishment, no medal." Fielding simply nodded. That was expected. "Return to your post." He turned to go. But before Fielding reached the door, Charles spoke once more, softly, with finality. "You didn't just protect the crown. You protected what the crown stands for." No bow, no handshake. Just the quiet click of the door as Fielding stepped back into the corridor, the study fading behind him like a held breath finally released. Outside, the wind had shifted. The sky had not yet cleared, but something had been reset. 3 days passed. The headlines moved on. Half-hearted royal speculation gave way to trade strikes, budget debates, and aging actors' controversial award speech. By the 4th day, the public had all but forgotten the pendant, the suite, the story without a photo. But inside the palace walls, the memory held tighter. Sergeant Fielding returned to rotation without ceremony. His boots echoed down the same marble corridors. His name reappeared on the duty roster, unbolded and unmarked. The red tunic was the same, the stillness in his posture unchanged, but every once in a while someone paused when passing. Not for long, not openly, but enough to betray what wasn't said in the press. They knew. The guard mess hall was quieter than usual that week. Conversations dipped when he entered, not coldly, just cautiously. As though his presence reminded them that sometimes loyalty demanded a kind of bravery no one was trained for. He didn't seem bothered. If anything, he moved lighter, more deliberate, not proud, just settled. His logbook entry from that night had been archived, not destroyed, not amended, just sealed. Unauthorized regalia sighting, recovered. Item returned under Clause 12 protocol, no resistance encountered. The Palace Communications Office issued no new statement. The incident was never formally denied, only buried under careful silence. But across the Atlantic, American talk shows kept circling back. Clips of Trump mentioning the pendant, and the princess and the pendant played on loop. Framed with speculation, commentary, political outrage, depending on the network. None of them had the photo. None of them knew about the guard's quiet step into the room. That made the myth stronger. At a private charity gala, 2 weeks later, Diana appeared in a modest navy gown. No pendant, no crest, just a silver bracelet. She spoke briefly about children's hospices and the need for quiet resilience in a loud world. One reporter asked her, off mic, whether she missed the crown. She only smiled. Some things are worth remembering, others are worth letting go. No further questions were taken. In a shadowed corner of the East Wing archives, a royal archivist logged a new entry. Item: Windsor pendant, recovered from unauthorized possession during private intervention by serving guard. Condition: pristine. Custody secure. Notes: filed without exhibition schedule. No public display recommended. Its location: Shelf 12B, under glass. Beside a small brass placard that read, "Returned, not replaced." Back at the palace, Fielding resumed his gate post as the spring sun began to emerge after weeks of rain. Tourists took photos. Children waved. A guide explained the difference between Coldstream and Grenadier uniforms. He never moved, never acknowledged, just stood. Spine straight, boots polished, gloves pristine. But if you looked closely, closer than cameras allow, you might have seen it in his eyes. The quiet certainty of a man who had acted alone, within the rules, against the weight of silence, and had not flinched. A year passed. The pendant was never mentioned again in public. No press release, no museum announcement, no televised documentary with archival experts debating protocol. And yet one morning in late spring, a modest line formed outside Kensington Palace's new exhibition. Legacy of Grace, Personal Artifacts of Diana. It wasn't a major affair, no national coverage, just a quiet tribute curated by the late Princess's Old Charity Foundation. Funded, assembled, and opened without fanfare. Inside, the rooms were filled with letters, handwritten notes, favourite books, gifts from hospital visits. A child's drawing in crayon, a worn ballet slipper, a photo of Diana hugging a teenager in a wheelchair. Toward the final gallery, a small glass pedestal stood alone beneath soft lighting. Atop it, a single velvet box, closed, untouched. Next to it, a discreet plaque. No elaborate script, no golden frame, just 4 words. Returned by Royal Guard, 2025. That was all it said. Visitors passed quietly, unsure whether to linger. Some bowed their heads without knowing why. Others took photos, unaware of what was inside. But one man knew. From behind the crowd, Fielding stood in civilian clothes. Coat collar turned up, blending easily into the background. No one recognized him. No one approached. He watched for a moment as a young girl stepped up to the case. Her mother whispered softly that the pendant had once belonged to a queen. She stared at the velvet box as if it might open on its own. Fielding didn't stay long. He turned and left without a word, the echo of his shoes swallowed by the marble. Later that evening, he logged the visit in his private journal, not in detail, just a single line. Legacy doesn't need headlines, only guardians. He folded the page, tucked the journal away, and placed a fresh uniform on the press rack beside his bed. Tomorrow, his rotation resumed. Same post, same stillness, but now the Crown knew exactly what silence could protect. What would you have done in the guard's place? Stepped in or stayed silent? And should any man, no matter how powerful, ever be allowed behind royal lines without consequence? Let us know in the comments. We read every one. And if you believe some duties are sacred, even when no one's watching, make sure you're subscribed and tap the bell icon so you never miss a story like this again. Share this video with someone who still believes the Guard is just for show. And as our other Royal Guard stories appear on your screen, go ahead and watch those next. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, right here.